Imagine a team of police divers. They're scouring this small, completely still lake for, 2 whole weeks.
Right, and they have all the high-tech gear.
Exactly. They have sonar, they have thermal imaging, decades of combined underwater recovery experience. They're looking for 3 missing campers, and they find absolutely nothing.
Not even a dropped flashlight. Or, a boot.
Nothing. Not a trace of organic matter. So you really have to ask, how does a stagnant body of water just completely erase physical evidence?
It's wild. It just defies logic.
It really does.
Okay.
So today, for you listening, we are doing a deep dive into this profoundly unsettling narrative. It's a first-hand account from a collection titled The Stone Sentinels of Blackwater Lake.
Such a chilling title, honestly.
It is. And our mission today is to strip away the local folklore and look at the actual terrifying reality of what was documented beneath that surface. We're examining what happens when hypermodern expertise collides with an environment that basically rejects the laws of physics.
Yeah, and that complete absence of evidence you mentioned, that's really the critical starting point here.
Right.
Because when a local community insists a place is cursed, we tend to dismiss it as just a protective myth, just a spooky campfire story.
Oh, for sure. We think they're just trying to keep kids away from the water.
Exactly. But the history of Blackwater Lake, which is located deep in the dense forests outside Devgarh, it's verifiable. The text paints this highly specific, eerie environment.
Yeah, the details are super creepy, except the shoreline choked by dead trees.
Right, and this persistent, unnatural stillness in the air. Plus, there's this ironclad local mandate to never, ever approach the water after sunset.
Especially when that thick fog sets in.
Yes. But the disappearances are really what give those rules their teeth. Empty boats found drifting, swimmers who just slipped beneath the surface without a single splash.
And those 3 campers.
Yeah. The lake doesn't just claim victims, it completely sanitizes the crime scene.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when local legends are backed by total police failure, it usually keeps people away, right?
You would think so.
So it forces you to wonder what kind of psychology drives someone to look at that void and see an invitation. Which brings us to our protagonist, Armaan Khanna.
Right, the skeptic.
Yeah. He's one of India's most elite scuba divers. He maps flooded cave systems, explores super hazardous underwater ruins.
He operates in environments where literally one miscalculation with your gas mixture means you don't come back.
Exactly. But he approaches those environments with oxygen tanks, dive computers, and just extreme scientific rigor. To someone like him, Blackwater Lake isn't a supernatural threat.
No, to him it's just a dark body of water waiting to be illuminated.
But wait, if police divers found nothing for 2 weeks, why does Armaan think he'll find anything? Is it just pure arrogance, or does extreme expertise create this blind spot to danger?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a textbook case of normalcy bias, but it's amplified by his extreme professional competence.
Normalcy bias.
Yeah, in psychology, normalcy bias causes people to underestimate the likelihood of a disaster because they rely on their past experiences to predict the future.
Oh, I see.
Armaan has survived so many lethal depths that his brain has literally rewired itself to perceive all underwater hazards as just technical parameters.
Like it's just a math problem to solve.
Precisely. He believes every risk is quantifiable. You manage your depth, monitor your air, calculate decompression stops.
Right, he has a rigid framework for survival.
Yeah, so he simply cannot process the idea of an environment that operates outside of thermodynamics and biology.
And that blind spot becomes painfully obvious the moment he actually gets to Devgarh. The villagers are practically begging him to turn back.
They know what happens.
They do. And as he's prepping his gear at sunset, this old local fisherman approaches him. The fisherman tells him if the fog rolls in, you need to get out of the water immediately.
And how does Armaan react?
Oh, he gives him that polite, condescending smile that experts reserve for superstitious locals. He basically pats his top-of-the-line gear and says he'll be fine.
Of course he does.
But then the fisherman just looks at him and delivers this line that sets the entire tone for the deep dive. He says, the lake doesn't drown people, it keeps them.
Wow. And that phrasing is biologically significant.
How so?
Well, in a typical drowning scenario, a body undergoes a very predictable process of decomposition. Bacteria break down tissues, gases build up, the body eventually surfaces.
Even in really cold water.
Yeah, even in freezing water.
Gosh.
Chemical processes like corpse wax alter the physical state of the remains. A lake naturally reclaims and digests what falls into it.
Okay, so it breaks it down.
Right. So to say the lake keeps them, it implies an active, deliberate cessation of the natural decaying process. It suggests preservation.
Which is terrifying. And Armaan completely ignores the implication.
Completely.
So at exactly 11:40 p.m., this thick white fog rolls in, and he steps off the shore.
Right into the dark.
Yeah, and the sensory details of the descent in this account are incredibly clinical, which somehow makes it way more terrifying.
The clinical detachment makes the horror feel more real.
Exactly. The water is unnaturally freezing, like far colder than the ambient summer temperature should allow. And his dive light barely penetrates the darkness.
Because of the particles in the water, right?
Yes, the water is thick with this suspended particulate matter. He describes these tiny particles floating endlessly through his flashlight beam, and he compares them to falling ash.
That is such an eerie image. The isolation of a night dive is already profound. It basically robs a diver of their peripheral vision.
Right, you can only see what's right in front of you.
Exactly. But adding freezing temperatures and that ash-like particulate, it creates an environment of near-total sensory deprivation. He's completely severed from the surface world,
Completely reliant on his instruments.
in a medium that is actively resisting his presence.
Right, so for the first 20 minutes, it's just mud, dead fish, and tangled weeds. But around 80 feet down, the physics of a lake begin to break.
This is where it gets crazy.
It really does. The muddy slope abruptly gives way to these ancient man-made stone steps descending further into the abyss.
Under the lake.
Under the lake. And as he follows these steps deeper, he notices an impossible physical change. The freezing water actually begins to grow warmer,
Which shouldn't happen.
and the absolute silence of the lake somehow begins to feel physically heavy against his eardrums.
What's fascinating here is that the temperature shift is the exact moment his scientific framework should have just collapsed.
Because cold water sinks, right?
Exactly. Lakes naturally stratify into thermal layers. Cold water is denser, so it sinks to the bottom. Finding warmer water at 80 feet violates basic thermodynamics.
Unless there's a heat source.
Right, unless there is a massive localized energy source, like an underwater geothermal vent.
But there isn't one.
No. Combined with ancient architecture, it points to a very different kind of energy source.
It's like hiking deep into a freezing glacier and suddenly finding a perfectly operational blast furnace melting the ice from the inside out.
That's a great analogy.
So following those steps, the darkness opens up into a sprawling, impossibly old temple entirely submerged in the lake.
Just sitting there in the blackness.
Yeah, broken stone structures, towering pillars.
Yeah.
But the architecture isn't the focal point. Surrounding the entrance to this temple are hundreds of statues.
Hundreds of them.
Men, women, and children. And they aren't stylized art. They are hyper-realistic figures frozen in absolute terror.
The detail on them is insane.
The text notes microscopic details. Individual wrinkles, strands of hair suspended in the water, fingers clenched mid-motion. One figure is screaming. Another looks like it was captured the exact fraction of a second it tried to run away.
See, the precision of that detail crosses a very distinct line.
What do you mean?
Human sculptors, especially ancient ones, they stylize form. They don't capture the exact anatomical tension of panic with photographic perfection in solid stone.
That level of detail is exactly why my skeptical brain kicked in while reading this.
Oh, you thought it was a hallucination.
Well, yeah. We know Armaan is deep. It's freezing. He's under immense stress. In diving, high-pressure environments force nitrogen to dissolve into your bloodstream.
Right. Nitrogen narcosis.
Yeah. It acts like an anesthetic on the brain. The text even mentions Armaan briefly wondering if he's hallucinating. So isn't it possible his brain is just misinterpreting ordinary rock formations?
It's entirely logical that his brain would try to deploy that theory as a defense mechanism. Faced with the impossible, the brain tries to categorize it as a known biological failure.
Right, make it make sense.
But the mechanism of nitrogen narcosis doesn't support what he's seeing. High-pressure nitrogen dissolving into nerve membranes slows communication between brain cells.
So it makes you loopy.
Yeah, it results in euphoria, confusion, extreme anxiety. It's like severe alcohol intoxication.
Oh, I see.
It does not orchestrate a cohesive, static, highly detailed hallucination of a perfectly sound temple guarded by hundreds of uniquely expressive figures.
That makes sense. It's too coherent.
Exactly. Plus, the scene perfectly aligns with the fisherman's highly specific warning. Armaan hasn't discovered a hallucination. nor has he found a graveyard.
He's found a gallery.
He's descended into a gallery.
Man, and here's where it gets really interesting. The environment transitions from eerie anomaly to active threat.
The turning point.
Yes, his radio suddenly crackles with thick static, and through that interference, he hears a whispered voice clearly speak his name. Armaan.
Just hearing your name down there.
Terrifying. He assumes his surface team's signal is bouncing until he points his flashlight toward the massive doorway of the temple, and he realizes the voice is coming from inside the structure.
Oh, no.
He sees something massive shifting in the deep shadows. Instinctively, he backs away, and his flashlight sweeps back across the crowd of statues. Only this time, the eyes of the screaming statue are looking directly at him.
That subtle movement just shatters the illusion of preservation.
Totally.
Yeah.
The face is still locked in that stony paralysis, but the eyes are alive. They're frantic, tracking him. Then, a statue beside it blinks.
They're waking up.
Dozens of these frozen faces begin to twitch. Their mouths strain against the petrification, trying to pry themselves open. Tiny streams of bubbles escape their lips.
And they speak.
Yes. Collectively, they whisper a single warning. Don't let it see you.
Which completely redefines the horror of the lake. Because they aren't statues.
They're the people.
They are the missing campers. They are the lost fishermen from the past century and probably centuries before that.
Right after that warning, the entity finally emerges from the temple depths. And the visual here is pure cosmic dread.
It's a nightmare.
It's a massive shadow, loosely human-shaped, but stretched unnaturally thin, coated in thick black algae and hardened stone-like skin. Its head is bent at this impossible broken angle.
Ugh, the anatomy of it.
And as it glides out, hundreds of tiny pale eyes slowly open simultaneously across its featureless face.
The physical description suggests an amalgamation of deep aquatic decay and ancient geology. It's as if the lake itself manifested a physical avatar.
But wait, the behavior of the victims really gave me pause here.
How so?
In almost all traditional horror lore, cursed victims become extensions of the monster, right?
True, they usually get corrupted.
Yeah, they try to pull the living down with them. But here, these statues collectively strain to open their mouths to warn an arrogant stranger. They explicitly tell him to run.
They help him.
Yes. Later in his escape, Armaan notes that several of the frozen hands physically shove him upward toward the surface. Why would a curse allow its victims to retain enough autonomy to help him?
That autonomy is actually the true insidious nature of the curse. The victims haven't been corrupted into mindless servants. They haven't lost their humanity at all.
They're fully aware.
Yes, they are entirely conscious, trapped in an agonizing, eternal state of sensory paralysis, fully aware of the freezing water, the inability to breathe, and the horror of the creature.
Oh, that is horrific.
They warn Armaan because they still possess their empathy. They remember what it is to be human, and they are desperately trying to spare him the unimaginable torment of becoming a conscious monument.
Trapped in your own body while it turns to stone, fully awake for centuries.
That retained empathy makes it infinitely more tragic than simply drowning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the entity registers Armaan's presence. The statues silently scream for him to run. He pivots and kicks upward with everything he has.
It's a desperate escape.
The creature moves with terrifying liquid speed. Its elongated limbs scrape across the stone pillars, emitting a screech that explodes as raw pressure against Armaan's eardrums.
It's a physical attack.
And then the physics of the water change again. The lake grows strangely dense, heavy, and viscous, like an invisible force is physically dragging him back down.
Which implies the entity's control isn't just physical, but gravitational or molecular. By increasing the localized density of the water, it turns the medium itself into a physical restraint.
The lake is acting as a direct extension of its will. Armaan is burning through his oxygen, kicking against water that feels like wet concrete. The pressure wave from the screech actually fractures his dive mask.
He's so close to the surface, too.
He looks up, sees the pale glow of the fog just a few feet away. But right before he breaks the surface, the creature's massive hand clamps around his ankle.
Oh, God.
He looks down into the darkness, and those hundreds of pale eyes are staring right back up at him. And this is where the deepest layer of horror is revealed.
The face.
The creature's face slowly splits open right down the middle, opening vertically to reveal rows of stone teeth. But inside its massive mouth, there is no throat.
This part is so disturbing.
Moving frantically beneath the translucent inner skin of its mouth are living human faces, pressing against the tissue, screaming silently, trapped within the biology of the monster itself.
That image provides a terrifying mechanical explanation for how the lake operates.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you about.
Hmm.
We have the petrified statues guarding the temple, and we have the living faces trapped inside the creature. Are these two different types of victims, or is this a biological process?
If we synthesize the evidence here, it highly suggests a two-stage process of supernatural digestion and preservation.
Okay, walk me through that.
The entity doesn't consume for caloric energy, it consumes to assimilate terror. The screaming faces trapped inside its mouth represent the primary agonizing stage of transition.
It's extracting fear.
Yes, it absorbs their raw fear and life force while deliberately keeping their consciousness intact. Once that psychological extraction is complete, the victims are expelled and calcified.
They turn into the statues.
Exactly. They harden into the stone-like skin that coats the creature, and eventually they are deposited on the lake bed. The entity is a curator. It preserves victims as eternal, conscious batteries of fear.
Wow. So in pure panic, Armaan drives his dive knife blindly into the creature's arm. It sparks against the stone skin, but loosens the grip just enough.
He barely gets away.
Rips his ankle free, violently bursts through the surface, rips off his fractured mask. And the moment his head clears the water, the screeching and the immense pressure instantly vanish.
Just like that.
The lake is completely dead silent again. No ripples, no shadow, just the suffocating white fog in absolute stillness.
That immediate reset is a stark defense mechanism. It flawlessly conceals the massive violence happening just 80 feet below.
The ultimate deception.
Yes.
Armaan paddles to the shoreline, collapses in the mud. When villagers find him at sunrise, he is in a fetal position, shivering, completely mute.
The trauma just broke him.
And the text specifically notes that patches of his dark hair had turned completely white overnight.
Marie Antoinette syndrome, or Kennedy subita. It's a documented physiological response where immense stress halts melanin production.
Yeah, and he refuses to speak about the dive for weeks. Officially, he tells his sponsors his camera housing failed and the footage was entirely corrupted.
Which is the ultimate capitulation of modern logic, right?
It covers it up.
The reality of what he witnessed is so fundamentally incompatible with his scientific framework, his brain chooses suppression. Admitting the truth means admitting that physics and biology are useless against the unknown.
But the truth rarely stays buried, especially with digital evidence. A few months later, a leak surfaces on a niche diving forum.
The footage.
A 7-second video clip he hadn't managed to delete. It's grainy, but it clearly shows the impossible underwater temple. It pans across the rows of terrified, hyper-realistic stone people.
And that last second.
In the final second, just before it cuts out, one of the frozen women slowly turns her head toward the camera. She looks directly into the lens and silently mouths, "Still alive below."
Chilling.
Naturally, the video was scrubbed from the internet within hours, dismissed as a deepfake.
Which perfectly illustrates how our society protects itself. We use technology to insulate ourselves from uncomfortable truths. We label the unexplainable a hoax because the alternative is too destabilizing.
It really makes you look at the world differently. We sit in climate-controlled rooms, relying on satellites, convinced that if a threat can't be measured, it doesn't exist. We treat ancient warnings as fiction.
We do.
But Blackwater Lake proves that just because you refuse to believe in the monsters in the dark doesn't mean the dark isn't making a space for you.
And you know, regarding those ancient warnings, the source material leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling observation.
What's that?
Even today, locals around Devgarh strictly avoid the shoreline in the fog. The reason they give is that they frequently see human shapes standing completely still, just inches beneath the surface of the shallow water.
The victims.
Right. Now, we've analyzed the tragic reality that these victims retain their empathy. It's comforting to think those shapes are desperately trying to warn people away.
Right.
But considering the manipulative power of the entity, it raises a darker possibility. Has the creature weaponized their humanity?
Wait, you mean...
Are those conscious victims being forced to the shallows? Are their pleading faces being used by the entity as bait, specifically designed to lure the next curious skeptic or heroic rescuer into the freezing depths?
Oh, wow. The empathy of the victim becoming the exact mechanism used to trap the next one.
Exactly.
If you saw a human face pleading for help just below the foggy surface, your science might tell you to run, but your humanity would almost certainly force you into the water.
And that is exactly how the lake keeps you.
That is heavy. Thank you for joining us on this exploration. We'll be back next time to pull apart another mystery, but until then, you might want to look a little closer at the water before you decide to jump in. Stay curious.